If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell icon to get the latest updates.
I think we can get started now. So today we will talk about the content which we have covered in the previous session 1 and 2, very basic, just as a recap, so that we are able to connect that. And we will show you how the Workday tenant looks like as well. We'll show certain transactions and certain key configurations which are really basic as well. Today we do not expect you to do a hands-on, but from starting tomorrow we'll be giving you certain assignments and everything, so that you are also able to look at the tenant, understand the config and all those things, right?
Okay.
So that's the plan. But before that, from the last two sessions, if you have any questions or anything specific which you had any doubts, or anything which you wanted me to cover again, if you want, I can do that.
No worries, Raj. I mean, I'm good with the last week topics.
Awesome. Perfect. So what I'll do is I'll screen share first, and I'll go through the first, basic things again. The reason being, these are kind of interconnected, so that, we'll go over it in very quick session. And after, completing slides and everything, so the plan is to close out the slide number 1, which is the module 1 and module 2. We'll go through that. And after that, Pushpa would be helping with the, showing you how the screen looks like from a Workday time tracking perspective. I'm sure you have seen the Workday screen, but how exactly what all things need to be discussed and shown, right? The basic ones, we'll go through those as well.
Okay.
Awesome. So let me share my screen, and then we can go through it. Hope you can see the screen, right?
Yes, I can see.
Awesome. So, I won't take a lot of time because we have already covered, because it was very extensive in a way, but just for adding these two topics together, because every topic is kind of interconnected across. We discussed in the first two sessions about Workday time tracking as a solution, how it is connected to multiple modules across. While we'll talk about configuration today, you have to think about how it is connected across these modules as well. So that's where the connection with the previous session is really important, so that you are able to relate any configuration, how it is impacting time tracking on, or how it is connected to other modules, right? We talked about HCM, we talked about payroll, we talked about absence and projects, how they're connected across, right? So we'll have to think from that perspective as well. Now, next to the things, I think this was again extensively covered, was on how the time is entered. Today, as an example, during the process, we will show you the self-service time entry, which is from the web browser, right? Similar to SAP screen, where people enter from SAP time entry screen, right? Similar to that, we'll show today, and how it looks like from an employee perspective, right? And obviously, there are options available on the mobile side of things and web clocks, right? Web clock is anyways very standard. You don't have to worry, swipe in, swipe out, and rest of the things are taken care of by the system. Also, with every process in HR system, we talked about how the approvals work in this place, and in simple terms, the workflow of the request, and how the overall workflow from end to end initiation of the request to final completion happens, right? So within Workday, we'll talk about that as well, that how exactly it looks like in terms of end-to-end flow. That comes under the business process side of things, which we'll cover later in the upcoming sessions. But to your understanding, business process, transactions, and the setup would be important, right? And we'll talk about that. Finally, two important things, which was we discussed in detail in the last session, how exactly the reporting is really different and very strong and robust across the Workday ecosystem, and especially with the time tracking, right? How exactly it is able to get real-time data processing and real-time calculations work into the system, right? So we talked about that as well. This is very straightforward, which we discussed again was, how exactly the time clock integration, end-to-end overall control from a manager standpoint, as a manager, what all capabilities are there, and obviously the setup part of things, which we'll talk about, how it is easy to configure it, certain things which can be specific to any group of individuals and any group of employees. So that's done. And finally, I think this was the important thing, which, if you remember in our last time, I have a note as well, we discussed, right, what all areas the time tracking would be useful. Obviously, if you are setting up Workday time tracking, your purpose is to obviously allow employees to enter time, right? The primary need is, you want to track employee time, right? You are tracking employee time using certain logic, and from a business need perspective, you need to do that. Obviously, if you compare it with SAP, then it would be positive time tracking and negative time tracking, right? Positive time management and negative time management. So all those things are also important, that in a Workday ecosystem, in your overall company, you won't need time tracking to be enabled for everyone. That is point number one. If you are an organization, there would be most likely a chance that not everyone would use a time tracking system. So your time tracking would be specific to a certain level of people only. In case of HCM, in case of absence management, in case of payroll, most likely everyone would be using it directly or indirectly. Okay. But in case of time tracking, it is different in a way. Reason being, not everyone is required to enter time. Most likely in every organization, everyone is required to be having their profile in Workday system, having certain benefits, having certain compensation, having certain details in the system. But in time tracking, not everyone would be there in time tracking. For example, you have time tracking enabled in your system, but let's say you have offices in Germany, Netherlands, Malaysia, China. In all these locations, there are only set of people who are using time tracking or they need to report time. Okay. Rest, all of the people do not. And those people would be, office people, or, they're working in a different function. They don't need to record time. So for them, there won't be any option to enter time as well. So that we will see that how exactly it is defined, right? And while showing all that, I'll tell you, while Pushpa would be sharing the screen later, right, during the session, we'll see that how exactly we define the. Yeah, someone is getting a call, something. Yeah, no worries. How it is linked to HCM as a module as well, right? Because if you define eligibility, right, if you define certain people to be eligible, how exactly you derive that logic, right? That is also important.
Okay.
Yeah. For example, in SAP, you might be using certain logic of pay code group, or certain employees in certain country code or personal sub area, personal area, and all those logics. Similarly, here as well, you'll have to define a logic, right? Based on that, the eligibility will be defined. Okay.
Okay.
So that's one. Secondly, if someone is entering 10 hours, right? How exactly those 10 hours will be treated? Are they getting some extra pay for that? Are they getting, a default rate for that? Or if someone is working for 14 hours on a weekend, are they getting some additional premium on top of that or not? Right. Usually in companies, if someone is working a night shift, right? If someone is getting, let's say, $10 per hour, let's say, or $20 per hour, $30 per hour. In the night shift or certain graveyard shifts, it might be a different rate. It might be 1.1 times, right? 1.2 times as well. So if someone is working for 10 hours in the night shift or 8 hours in the night shift, essentially it becomes more, right? Either we make those hours, multiplied by that number, or you might change the rate as well, So if you're talking about rate, then obviously payroll comes into the picture as well, right? That So again, two modules are already interconnected. If you see, HCM and payroll. from the logic perspective, right? So we'll have to see the rate part of things as well. And finally, the third line, which is there on the payroll, can compensate workers, right? Very straightforward. Finally, whatever is the R, in the system, either you will use Workday payroll or you'll use a certain third-party vendor to, send out those details across. So finally, payroll would be also coming to the picture across. Be it any Workday time tracking implementation, it won't be the case that you are not talking to payroll. By default, at the end, you want the payroll processing to be done. You would have, payroll involved directly or indirectly. In case of absence management, you might find certain clients that they are not having a robust payroll integration across because they might do certain things manually, or they might look at exceptions only, right? But in case of time tracking, it is very close because every day, if they are not entering hours, they won't be paid. So again, the logic comes of positive and negative time management and how time tracking looks at it. In case of absence, if you see, by default, if the assumption might be that if someone is taking something extra or an unpaid time off, then only they will be impacted by payroll, right? If someone is not having the holidays and someone is taking some holiday which is not in their balance, then only their payroll will be impacted from absence point of view. But from time tracking point of view, if you are expected to log in and log out every day, and if you are not doing that for that day, you are not getting paid. So that's where the integration between payroll, absence, and time tracking is crucial, and especially between payroll and time tracking. Okay. Any questions, Sirisha?
No, I'm good for now, Raj.
Awesome. Reason being, I'm again talking about foundations because that would help you. Because
Right.
all right, I think now we are jumping into the configuration side of things. But before going to the configuration, right? Before looking at everything, I want to talk about that. Okay. So what we are talking essentially here is there are certain aspects of time tracking which need to be created, right, at the time of first setup. Okay, if you are going to a fresh client or fresh organization where you are working as time tracking implementer, right, then these topics are more important. But if you are someone who's working in a system where already time tracking is established, right, these systems or these things are important, but not to an extent. Similar to SAP, right? For example, you define personal sub area, personal areas, company code, different transactions, right? Different reasons available, different fields available, different info types usages. You are doing it initially at the start of the project. Once that is done, once you are already live, it is more on the operational side of things. So these topics which we are covering right now are more towards the foundation side of things. Okay, that you are doing it for the first time, right? Company setting up time tracking for the first time. In the later part of the training, our focus would be shifted toward the operational side of things, and we'll talk about how do we look at different transactions, different issues, and all those things, right? Reason being, you won't find any client right now, if they are in Workday, 99% they're already on Workday time tracking if they are using it or they plan to use it. There won't be a case that there would be very limited cases where someone is implementing time tracking from the start as well. There could be certain exceptions, there could be certain smaller organizations, but if I see from an industry standpoint, you'll most likely be working in a company or a client where you would be supporting an existing setup. Okay. There could be a certain scenario where you are expanding your geographies, or your company acquires something, or you are moving to a new country where time tracking needs to be established, and those kind of things, or certain type of population is becoming eligible of time tracking, right? Then all these things would be important. Okay. So one of the key things is, if we talk about time tracking as such, right, there are key things such as time entry, setting up time entry, and we won't talk too much about it right now, how do we set up and all those things. But just keep it in your mind that, from a setting up of a time entry essentially involves how do you make sure that person is eligible for time entry and all those areas. Okay. And once we see the screen, it will be more easier to understand rather than looking at the slides, because these
Okay.
are very, I would say, system based topics where, it's always better to look at the system rather than, looking at the content, because then you'll be able to relate and we can talk theoretical part during that screen time on the tenant. Okay.
Mhm.
The second one, and these steps are in sequence right now from a setup standpoint, but think of these as individual topics in your mind. First
Mhm.
one is more about, setting up time entry. The second one is really important. If you see, we were talking about period schedules, right? You had a question, right? If someone is entering the data 6 months back, entering time 6 months back,
Right.
how that person would be able to do that, or how do we restrict that, right? That's
Mhm.
where the period schedules come into the picture. And by period schedules, these are the same period schedules used in the payroll. If some organization is using a bi-weekly period or a weekly period or a monthly period, in general, most of the cases it would be monthly or bi-weekly. So we try to establish certain dates of it, right? For example, in US right now, it is a bi-weekly period starting from yesterday, right? So there is
Mhm.
a new bi-weekly period. For time tracking as well, you would use the same bi-weekly period for your time tracking calculations, time
Mhm.
tracking configuration. Reason being, you want to be in sync with payroll to send out the data, and by data I mean time information, so that it is paid accordingly. Imagine a case where your time tracking period schedule is different from payroll's period schedule, right? Technically,
Mhm.
you can have multiple different schedules, but here it is always advised to have the same ones, because it is easier to manage all these things, and for your integration runs as well, for your if you're using an external vendor as well, you would have a
Mhm.
certain specific date to run all these, right?
Mhm.
So that's where it should be similar and coincided. And if it is Workday payroll, then obviously it is recommended, and it's more of a system mandate. Actually, I have not seen anyone using a different date uh, for the purpose.
Okay. Okay. So if I relay back to SAP, so we're like talking about schedules and payroll area, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll talk about this. So period schedules are more about your monthly payroll dates, but
Uh-huh.
there is work schedule as well, employee work schedule, and we'll talk about that. That work schedule is more about what is the shift of that person and all those things. So
Okay.
there are two or three different aspects. Number one, since you raised that point, right? Number one is obviously the period schedule, which is called, which is important from a payroll standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Then there is something called work schedule, which defines individuals work schedule from, if I'm working from Monday to Friday, or Saturday Sundays off, or if I'm working on a different time zone or time shift, right? So that's number two, work schedule. And number three, because that is, see, period schedule is not defining anything about my work, that how I'm working on a daily basis. Period
Mm-hmm.
schedule is just telling me, okay, this is my payroll date, this is the payroll range, and we will
Mm-hmm.
collect the data of time tracking from these dates to these dates and send it across. Okay.
Okay.
So, but the work schedule defines, okay, you are expected to work on Monday to Friday, not on Saturday and Sunday. So all those things are defined at work schedule. Okay. So two things, once in the later part of session, right after we come back from a break later, right, we'll look at all these things, right,
Mm-hmm.
of period schedule, work schedule. Now
Mm-hmm.
next important thing is worker eligibility rules for time tracking.
Okay.
This is similar to what we were talking about, right? Not everyone would be eligible for time tracking. That you have to define a logic,
Mm-hmm.
you have to define it based on certain logic, that all Malaysia employees working in these locations having this job profile are eligible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, or all US employees working from California are eligible. So those kind of logics we will define at the time tracking eligibility rules. So these are called worker eligibility rules. The same rules are used in multiple areas, and we'll talk about it later that how exactly these rules are used across. There is a concept called time entry template as well, where these rules are added to define the eligibility. And once we look at the session tenant from that perspective, we'll talk about that. So there are multiple topics coming in, and their names are very similar to each other, Sirisha. Right. So you have to be, a little bit careful here. We can spend more time today and tomorrow to understand all this.
Okay.
So that you are clear, because the logic is, again, the fourth topic is time calculations, right? Again, this is a similar name, but the time calculation is very straightforward technically. Whatever information, and this is the, I would say, this is the meat of, the work which you do. Whatever time is entered by the employee, how do you define, how do you manage, how do you transform that to a certain logic? Those all things are happening on the time calculations. That if some employee is entering 9 hours, how exactly those 9 hours will be divided and bucketed in certain names or time types, right? Those all things. So for example, if someone is working for 12 hours, the employees was expected to work only for 8 hours, right? So what about rest of the 4 hours? Those 4 hours to be tagged as overtime. All that logic will be defined using time calculations, right? And the next line is super important. Skip this step if you're not interested in having Workday platform calculations. So that's a very important one. Again, coming back to our discussion from the last session, you were telling a scenario where all the logic and everything Kronos is doing. If Kronos is doing that for you, then you don't have to worry about time calculations. You just have to receive the integration information. Because it is already processed, you don't have to worry too much about processing it again. So that's where your time calculations would be utilized to a bare minimum level, or not even utilized as well. Okay. If you want to process the data, the time into certain logic, then only you are using time calculations. Otherwise, there are two cases, Sirisha. Just think from end-to-end perspective here. If the clock person or the vendor, if they are sending you already processed information, okay, if you are getting a already processed information from the time clock, right, then you don't have to do anything on the Workday time tracking. Point number one. This is clear, right? Sirisha, you there on the call?
Yes.
Awesome.
So it's already processed, it's just integration directly to the Workday payroll.
Correct.
Okay.
Now look at the second scenario. Second scenario is you are just taking this information in time tracking, and let's say your payroll vendor is aware of all this logic, and that is how it is being configured there, that they are able to handle it, they are able to consume it, they are able to decide that how much payout should be done. So you can also send a non-processed data in certain exception cases, that you are not creating time calculations, you are just sending the raw data to that payroll vendor. Okay, so that can be a case as well, where you are not utilizing time calculations fully. Okay. And fifth one is really important, time entry validations. Now, time entry validations are nothing but, just look at the name, time entry validations. So whatever validation you want to put in at the time of time entry, and by time entry, it is employee entering time. Whatever you want to put a validation or a logic or a restriction or an error or a notification, all these things you can put in time entry validations. Okay. So if you as an employee or a time entry user or a time clock user, if you are entering a certain time, system should restrict that or not. All these things should, for example, for Monday, you are entering 25 hours. Obviously, this is not a logical entry where you are entering more than 24 hours in a day. System would restrict that. If you are entering something which is beyond certain logic, certain standard logics, all these things can be created from your side. But in most of the cases, it should be already there in the system where time tracking is already, implemented already. So you don't have to worry, but these are very basic, I would say, the setup part of things. Okay. So we have covered all these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll talk about these in system, but just think of it again from your perspective. If you have any understanding, you have clear understanding on these or not. All clear on this one?
Yeah, I'm good, Raj.
Awesome. Now we were talking about two things here. I think we have already covered these two, the work schedule part and the holiday schedule part. Think of holiday schedules as holiday calendars, because in Workday, even though holiday schedule is being used, but look at holiday calendar in your mind, because it is initially, a lot of companies now use holiday calendars, and so the name would be holiday calendar in the system when you configure it. But obviously two schedules which are really important are work schedule and holiday schedules. And obviously the first one, which was this one, which was period schedules, right? So three different schedules technically are there which are important.
Okay.
And these are to be defined. Usually, again, it is not on the time tracking to define everything. Holiday schedules come under absence as well, right? Absence as a module. So usually the absence person, whoever is the absence person handling absence management as a module in your organization, creates that.
Okay.
Okay. In general, if Workday and time tracking are there, then the onus lies on. So period schedules are usually owned by payroll. Okay, just for your knowledge, if all three modules are there. Okay. Work schedules are more majorly owned by time tracking, and holiday schedules are majorly owned by absence management team in general, because these three are interconnected in these three modules. But from your perspective, obviously, if you are creating time tracking module or establishing time tracking module from the start, then these three things should be there in the system. Then only you can think of it. Okay. Seventh step is configure payroll to pay time. Obviously, this is the same step if you are using Workday payroll, or if you are using an external one. And we'll talk about this in detail as well. There are multiple ways of doing it, but you don't have to worry too much about it, because you should look at foundation right now. And eighth and ninth step, obviously, like I said earlier as well. And how do you manage time off? And by time off, it is absence management again. Absences, any PTO, any leave or absence, all these things, how they are related to your time tracking. For example, if you have already entered 2 months of medical leave system, and if you are entering the time there on those dates, system should not allow that, right? One example of that. Second example would be if you have already sent the data for the day, because absence also talks to payroll directly. If the payroll vendor has already received the time for that day, okay, the person has already applied a leave or absence, which can be paid or unpaid, then your time tracking data becomes null.
Can you come again, Raj?
Yeah, sure. If you again think of this scenario again, if you have already, if the vendor or if absence has already shared the number of hours for that day to the payroll vendor, then your time information doesn't matter, frankly. If you see, ideally should not be there actually, right? If the person has already applied a time off there or leave of absence for that day, let's say 26th March was a working day, but as an end user, the end user has already applied a sick time off. Okay. Then the expectation is that the person is not working on that day. If the person is working on that day, and these two, then he should cancel the time off, right? Sick time off. Let's say, right? if the system is sending two different information, ideally it should not happen at the first place. But if that happens, obviously the precedence would be given to absence management, because
Okay.
it is more of a time entry, non-time entry. It is more of an absence recorded by the employee himself or herself.
Okay. Okay. So basically, like when you're recording the time, it checks the employee status. If he's on a leave, it does not. I mean, it will not able to record the time.
Yeah, you have to set up that. There could,
Okay.
but again, see, if you look at that scenario, if person takes a half day, then system should allow for the other half to be applied. So that's where multiple scenarios would come into the picture. That is
Okay.
according to each and every, country or company, or different type of rules. These vary, in all form, shape, and sizes across. Every organization will use time tracking very differently as well. It can be extremely complex. Extremely complex, I mean, I think it is one of the most complex modules, if you really ask me, time tracking from that perspective, that how complex it can become, right? Because it can be a lot of calculations in terms of managing, or it can be managed in a different decent way, which is the recommended way, because time tracking as a module is anyways, I think if you see from all the areas, right, payroll and time tracking is considered to be the toughest modules across, where a lot of calculations and a lot of effort is required in terms of maintaining, right? So that's where it totally depends how exactly it is being configured as well. For example, if it's straightforward request where we just need to ensure that time is being recorded and sent to payroll, that's it. Any deviations by default are tagged as overtime, irrespective of the day. Then it becomes a straightforward kind of an approach where, okay, that if within that day, if it's crossing its threshold, then it is tagged as overtime. For overtime, the person is getting, $1 more per hour or $2 more per hour, whatever. But that logic is defined at payroll.
Okay.
Okay. Finally, coming to our topic again, how do you manage time off? This obviously comes on the absence side of things. And the last one is, time tracking for mobile. Again, how do we enable that? We'll talk about it later. But all the logic which you have created on your main configuration page, the same would apply on the mobile as well. There are certain limitations as well, where a lot of clients do not use it as well. And we'll talk about that, but not to worry too much about time tracking for mobile as of now. Okay.
Okay.
Any questions between these two slides, Sarisha? You can go through it once again. Let me give you 30 seconds to pause and make a picture in your mind. Take 30 seconds in this slide and next one as well before we move ahead.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, take your time.
Mhm.
Are you clear, Sirisha?
Yes, one quick question.
Sure.
So regarding worker eligibility rules, suppose an employee moves from a non-exempt to exempt, where like exempt you don't have to record any timesheet. Does it automatically, the eligibility rules, I mean, will be removed when the employee moves from a non-exempt to exempt position?
Good question. So two things to note here. The rules which are defined, worker eligibility rules, are not defined for individual person. For example, if you, me, and Pushpa are in the system as time entry users, I'm not defining rules for Raj. I'm not defining rules for Pushpa. I'm not defining rules for Sirisha. What I'm defining is, if someone is working from this office, or having this job profile and this employee type, then the person will get time tracking as an option to enter time. Number one. So you are not defining at an individual, you are defining at employee type. Point
Okay,
number one.
but you told employee type in this location, if this employee type, then eligibility rules are applied. So that is what you're saying, right? Employee
Correct.
type exempt and non-exempt.
Now look at this one, real-time calculations again. If someone is moving their status, if someone becomes exempt, non-exempt, whatever, right? Promotion to a different job profile, transfer to a different country, as soon as that is effective, based on your worker logic, based on the condition logic which you created, worker eligibility rule. If the person is eligible, he or she will be able to enter time. If the person is not eligible, he or she won't be able to, enter time. That's it. So look at it from that perspective. Within PA and OM, coming to SAP for your better understanding, whatever transactions are being handled there, if someone is getting a transfer, promotion, whatever, if by that action the person becomes eligible or non-eligible on time tracking side of things, okay,
Okay.
then that happens automatically. You don't have to worry that, okay, someone got promoted, someone got transferred, I have to change the time entry calculations, time calculations, eligibility calculations. No, you define it one time. If you hire a new person as well, if the new person is eligible for your time entry, by default that person would be eligible. If you define a certain logic, it would follow that, depending on employee type, whatever is the data. Think of it from a data perspective. Your time tracking is connected to HCM. Okay. HCM is feeding you the information about the person is exempt, non-exempt, manager, senior manager, any other country, location, whatever. That logic we will define that logic based on the company, right? Company will tell us, okay, we need these type of people to be eligible. They won't tell, okay, Raj is eligible or Sirisha is eligible. No, they'll tell these type of people are eligible, working in this organization or that organization, whatever. We will follow that. Whatever happens within after that rule is created based on employee type. For example, employee gets terminated or moves out, right? Employee gets a promotion and moves to a different country. If your logic, according to your logic, the person is eligible, then person would be eligible. If the person is not eligible, then you don't have to worry as per your logic. Okay.
Okay. And this is all day driven, right? Like once every day, like once you change that group or thing, like it automatically impacts your eligibility rules.
Exactly similar to, let's say, 31st of the month, 31st of the March, the person belongs to a certain group where he or she is eligible. After 31st, on 1st, the person moves to a different organization, different country. Okay. Let's say the person moves from Singapore to Switzerland. In Singapore, employees were required to enter time, but from 1st of April, the person is moving to Switzerland, and the company rules there are, you don't have to worry about all this. So from 1st onwards, you don't have to worry, your rule would kick in, and then you will be able to, then the rules will be applicable as such for Switzerland.
Okay.
Okay. Any follow-up questions you have?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Perfect. Now in the next slide as well. These are very straightforward, but again, take just 10-15 seconds. All clear on these two, right? No issues on this one?
Yes.
Perfect. Now this is again really important. Now this talks about really basic step, or the first step, which is like the core of the configuration. If you see time tracking, you have to define how exactly the time is being entered, how exactly different groups are there, how exactly the different time entry templates are there. All these things are really like these 1 to 6, even though it looks like 6 steps, these are the big ones. Okay. Just read through these first, so that probably you should also think that what exactly these are meaning. I want you to think as well right now, because I think you have enough foundation. Just think of these steps and try to understand first from your side.
Okay.
Okay. So if you see these steps, right, these steps define time entry method, that how exactly time, what is the entry mode of time, right? Are you entering as an in out, in time and out time, or you are entering it based on certain hours, right? And once we look at the screen, it will be easier to understand. The rest of the steps are also really important. If you see time entry codes, we define all these codes and groups to a certain logic, and these would be beneficial when we look at the screen to talk. But if you see the first 1, 2, 3, 4 are kind of defining how exactly a person is entering time. Okay, so you define, okay, what would be the logic, what would be, different time entry code groups, time entry codes, time entry templates. And by time entry template, it is essentially, a logic or, a basic configuration for one person, or for one type of person to be eligible. For example, you can have one time entry template for your organization that everything remains the same across the organization, right? But there could be certain, yeah, go ahead.
So is it something like, from time perspective, they'll be using time codes, but when the system is evaluated and it sends to the Workday payroll, it will be turning to pay code?
Can you repeat that question again?
So for example, like when you're entering something into the time
okay,
on the screen, it will be like, you'll be using time code. But when the data is integrated to Workday payroll, when you're sending to Workday payroll, will be turned to pay code?
There is a name to that. So pay code is very different technically in Workday terms.
Okay.
There is a time calculation tag. You define a tag for those hours. That is picked up by payroll. So for example, your 9 hours are there as entered time, right? To link it to Workday payroll, there should be a time entry tag, and we'll talk about that. I think we have one slide for that. To talk to each other, there would be a tag required. It is just an identifier between these two modules to identify certain data. Okay. So by default, the logic of conversion won't happen. In your time calculations, you will create that logic to have a tag as well. And it is getting more technical, so that screen, once we look at the tenant as well, then it would be more easier to understand. Okay. But first 4 steps are important in terms of how the setup is being done, and we'll talk about this at the tenant. Just as a high level, I wanted to touch base. Step 5th and 6th as well. 5th is really important, how exactly the business process flow is being defined. The security and everything is being defined. Once you enter time, does it go for an approval? Does it go for no approval, or all those logics? The overall workflow part of things is at step 5. Okay. And the 6th one is more about reporting, that how do we look at the data when a person is entering the time for him or her, what exactly is the dashboard, and how exactly that is represented for the week for that person, right? We'll see that. And one of the key things or a starking difference would be, in general in Workday, it is by default a weekly based submission. In general, on a weekly basis, the expectation would be to enter time, to close out time. As an employee, you can enter time for 1 day and stop, 2 days or stop. But in general, you enter for 5 days and then click on submit, so that 6 days, 5 days, 7 days, whatever. On a weekly basis, you define that. And once we see the screen, we will think about it again and talk again. So this is covered from a time entry setup. I think from this slide perspective, one of the key things, again, this is more about, eligibility roles. We have covered these time entry codes as well. So time entry codes are nothing but, when you are entering time, for what purpose you are entering those time and everything, those are defined there. And once we look at the configuration, we can look at that. Third one is security. Security one we'll talk about in the next class, considering the sequence of things. But in general, you have to set up a security so that you as an admin can edit that. But by default, that ownership lies on your security person, the person who manages your end-to-end security. To compare it with SAP, it is more on SAP basis guys, or someone handling the security end-to-end. GRC guys, usually they handle all these things. But from Workday standpoint, that setup is provided and given to you by default. So that you are able to create worker eligibility rules and time entry codes. Okay.
Okay.
I think this should be, and this is more on the steps. How do we create time code group and all those things? This is more on the tenant side of things. How do we create that? Access the create time code group task, on time entry to use the different logic. You don't have to look at it. Frankly, if you really ask me, how do we configure? You can go through it once again, during the class or, later as well. But in general, how do we create the time entry code task? Once you look at the screen, so slowly you will understand that what all things you need to be entering to ensure the right logic is being driven, right? If you don't fulfill or enter any information which is a mandatory information, then system won't allow you to go ahead and close it, the configuration. For example, you are defining certain things and which are not correct, system would restrict that as well. So in the time code group task, you do multiple things in terms of time entry and all those areas. Again, this is very from a system driven. We'll talk about this on the system side of things. So if you see, these 4 things which we have covered are more on the system, which we will cover right away after taking a break. Just think of these topics, and once we come back, what I'll do is, Pushpa would be sharing the screen in helping, certain things about all this. And, in parallel, we can discuss everything, right? That how do we look at period schedule? How do we look at holiday calendar? How exactly the screen looks, first of all. See, you should look at, right now you can configure without worrying to, because since you are new in the ecosystem, probably today we'll talk about the basic stuff as well, that how exactly the screen looks. I don't know if you have seen the Workday time tracking screen or not.
No, I didn't see it.
So yeah, so our logic, I don't want to directly jump into something which you are not aware. You should know that if you are creating something, how exactly it will look at it, right? How exactly the front of the screen looks. So that is important, right? I cannot tell you to, create a custom info type without telling you about basic info types and basic actions, right? So similarly, I'm not jumping on the calculations right away. What I'm doing is, look and feel, and the basics should be clear to you. So that's the plan. Let's take a break because it was a highly, I would say, detailed tech class, initial first 45 minutes or 1 hour which we had. What we'll do is take a 10-minute break, and after that we will go through the basics which we covered today on the Workday tenant, and then after that we'll go to the slide 2. We'll go through the content and then again come back to the tenant again to look at those aspects. Okay. So that's the plan. Let's take a break and let's meet in 10 minutes from now.
Okay, sure. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Okay. So Sirisha, what we'll do is, we have covered a lot of basic topics right now. If you see, multiple areas, multiple things. So next, I would say next 1 hour or so, what we will do is to help you with the overall basics on the tenant and tell you basics about Workday tenant as well, right? But while Pushpa is sharing the screen on Workday tenant, right? I had one question to understand how much should we tell, right? Can you tell us about what all do you know about Workday tenant as of now? Because that will help me and help us to understand how deep in a topic we need to go. Because I don't want to give a generic kind of information to you, so that it won't be useful. So the approach would be to understand how much do you know about Workday in general, because
I don't have any hands-on. I don't have any hands-on, Raj. Just like I'm little familiar with some HCM screens.
Okay, so you have seen those screens, but taught anything?
Right. That is it.
Perfect. All right. So we'll have to probably give more time on the basics.
Yes.
And that would be good in a way. I don't want to give you access without giving you knowledge as well, right? Otherwise, it's not a point to, to do something which is not important. Pushpa, are you ready with the tenant so that we can talk about basics? You can go through these basics which we discussed, right?
Yes, Ras. Yeah. Let me just share my screen. Yeah. Are you able to see my screen?
Yep, we can. Can you?
Yes, yes.
Awesome.
Okay, sure. So yes, it is to start with the Workday tenant, right? This is how the Workday tenant home screen looks like for any kind of Workday tenant. Okay. So basic, to start with the basic, like whenever you log into the Workday tenant, you will be able to see this home screen where you will be having the very basic information about that particular organization, how it has been set up in the tenant. So these all the screen that what you have been seeing here, right? The announcement or the timely suggestions or recommended for you. These are basically the organization-wide configurations. So how you wanted to view your employee, like, okay, the kind of picture or the any specific message that you wanted to you want the employee to view when they log into the Workday tenant, then you can also can configure here. Okay, and there is a specific view all app is there, right? When you click over here, you will be able to see all the applications that the employees are having the access to. Okay, so these are this view all app. It is like first let's understand, okay, from the let's say it is a personal information, right? Okay, so here when you click on the personal information, the employee will be able to view the very basic detail, like the employee personal information means what it contains: your date of birth, your gender, your legal name, the employee name, first name, last name, and all, right? So those kind of information you can come and view over here. And here different, like if you have the time tracking module, in this again this application, you will be able to view when the particular module that is enabled in the tenant. Okay, so let's say where we are able to see the absence, right? Absence, team type, and compensation, anniversaries or expense. So these are all the areas where it has been enabled for the particular country or for particular employee, and hence the employee is able to view the screen. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so this is all about the apps that you will be able to view in the Workday tenant. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and here again, this is the screen where you can type any kind of you can search any kind of task. Okay, let's say for example, I wanted to view the holiday calendar. You can just type in view holiday calendar, and then it will take you to the particular task, like how you can view the holiday calendar. You wanted to search any employee name, you can just type in that, and then it will take you to that particular employee detail. Okay, like anything, let's say you wanted to create something, let's say you want to create a holiday calendar, right? Again, you just type create holiday, then it will take you like what are the create holiday calendar, then create holiday calendar or the work schedule calendar rule, everything like what comes under the create time off. So everything it you will be able to view that, and then particular, like you can go ahead and then create the particular task. So when you search, you can see here, right? This is a task. So this is nothing but create holiday calendar. It's a task that you will access to create a holiday calendar in the tenant. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So before going ahead with create a holiday calendar or to set up any of the work schedule calendar, let's see the already existing, how to view a holiday calendar or how to view a work schedule calendar, and what are the components in inside it, what does it all belong to. And then after that, so that when you get the access to the tenant, it will be very easy for you to create the holiday calendar or work schedule calendar. The setup will be very much easier before going creating anything in the tenant. So let's say I'm just going to the view holiday calendar. Okay, so see here, as you can see, I just type view holiday and automatically it appear in the screen, right? So view holiday calendar, I just went ahead and it will be, let's say for India, I wanted to view the holiday. So I just typed in holidays for India. So this holiday calendar name could be anything, like you here you can say holidays for India or holiday calendar for India. The name can be anything that you wanted to again define in the tenant. So this name can be like it is again organization specific, how you wanted to give the naming convention to a holiday calendar, like how it has been already set up in the tenant. So similar naming convention again you have to follow. Let's say for India, we have the holiday calendar already created. Next country, let's say I wanted to create something for Brazil. Okay. So again, you have to keep the naming convention very similar to what already it is existing, so that there is a consistent in the system setup. Okay. Are you getting it, Sirisa?
Yes, Pushpa.
So here you can see view holiday calendar. So this is the name, the holidays for India. And then the second field will be your description. Okay. So what is the name? So this is first you are defining the name. This is the more detailed description that you wanted to provide to the name. That will be like national or statutory holidays for India. Okay. So here you are defining more detailed version, like why, like what it contains. Okay. So here you can create, let's say, holiday for India, or a state specific also you can create holiday for, let's say, Telangana. Okay, holidays for Maharashtra also you can define like that. So here first you have to create, you have to provide the name of that holiday calendar, and then the description, like what it what it contains. Then the third field, again, there is one more field that is called the country or country region. Okay. So here, if you wanted to define based on a country specific, let's say here also you can define the holidays for India. Here also you can mention as a India as a country, or the country region, any particular region also you can you can mention over here. Let's say you wanted to create a holiday for a particular state, then you can define directly. Then automatically for that country, this holiday calendar will be applicable. Okay. So right now here, as you can see here, it is empty. So it doesn't mean that if it is empty, then all the country it is eligible for, because we also have the calendar rule. Okay. So the calendar rule is nothing but it defines the how the holiday calendar will be which kind of country employees, or which country people, or which region employees will be eligible for this holiday calendar. Okay. So this is the calendar rule, like we have, I can just we can again more deep dive into that, how the calendar rule has been set up in this system. So this is the calendar rule. Again, you wanted to, let's say you wanted to define something, holiday worker located in India. Also, all the full-time employees, those will be applicable for this holiday calendar. Again, you can set up a calendar rule also based on the worker located in India, as well as the full-time workers also. Okay. So for anything, okay, one more thing I'm thinking, that I just forgot to mention you from the beginning is, whenever you see anything, right, three dots, wherever we have this three dot, this is called the related action. So you, once you can click into that, you will have a more many options, like here all the possible options, like what are the actions that you can perform for this particular task. Let's say here, this is the holidays for India, this is a holiday calendar. And then when I clicked over here, I can view that, I can see here it is a edit option, and there is an option for delete. Okay, I can go ahead and edit this holiday calendar, as well as I can delete this holiday calendar from the tenant. Okay.
So usually this is given access only to like who is supporting this, because we just like searched on the search option, right? So this is not given access to everyone.
This access will be only given to the who will be here, the time administrator, the who will be the configuring all this information in the all this setup in the particular tenant. Okay, so for employee specific, no, they will not have this kind of access to the tenant. Only who are doing the setup in the system, who are implementing, who are defining all this configuration, they will get the access. Okay.
Can the time admins get a view option of this?
Yeah, they will be having the time administrator also will have the view options, because the time administrator again it is depend on the security, right? What kind of security has been given to the time administrator. If they wanted to view the employees more detail, like the employees holiday calendar, then the work schedule calendar, or the time tracking, how many hours the employee had already entered, then based on the security, they will be able to view they will be able to view or perform certain tasks. Okay. Again, everything is in Workday, it is based on the security, right? Like how it has been, what are the security that has been given to the particular group, to the implementers or else the employees or the workers. Based on that, they will be able to access those tasks, and then they can configure or they can edit or delete those tasks in the Workday tenant.
Okay.
So here we have the holiday calendar, we have the edit, and we have the delete options, as you can see here. And next is the audit, right? So here in Workday, we have the options to audit. Let's say once I have set up the holiday calendar one, I have created the holiday calendar. If someone want to know that who has created this holiday calendar, okay, in the tenant, because once you are created, it is all set up, okay, but you want to know who has been created, then this is the view audit trail. You can just go and then click on the view audit trail, then it will take you to the detail, like when the holiday calendar has been created and it has been created by whom. Okay, let's say if it is by, if it has been set up by me, or if it is set up by if it has been set up by some other person or a particular group that has been created, then they will be able to view the audit in the audit trail. You will be able to view those details. Okay. And the next option is the calendar, right? So this is the calendar, the holiday calendar. This is where we are able to view the name, the description, and the calendar rule. When you create a holiday calendar, so these are the very basic information. First, you have to define it in the system. Then it is all done that you have created a holiday calendar. But again, we have the calendar event. Okay, so unless until you don't create the calendar event, right, your holiday calendar is not completed. So first you are just creating a holiday calendar, and again you have to edit this calendar event. So calendar event is nothing but the holidays. Let's say the Republic Day is a holiday, is a calendar event, right? It is a public holiday, or Independence Day is a public holiday. So these are the holidays we have to define in the system. We have to define in the tenant. Then unless until we don't add this event, then how the system will know that this holiday is applicable for which date, and like when it is applicable. Is it Republic Day? It is for 26th of January, right? So 26th of January, which year this holiday calendar is applicable, then you can define based on that date. So that this holiday calendar will be applicable for 26th of January 2009. Okay. Sirsa, are you getting it?
Yes,
or
yes.
it is too much of technical?
No, I'm good. So these holidays, do we need to set up every year?
Yes, every year you need to set up in the tenant.
Okay, does
Because
it like if you determine like this holiday happens always on January 1st, does it always like automatically populates or we have to go manually specify the date?
you have to manually create the calendar event for that particular date.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
Workday won't create anything for you,
yes.
Sirisha. By default, these are custom ones which you have to create every time. So even though every time Republic Day is 26th of Jan or Independence Day is on 15th, whatever, everywhere, even though it is common information, it you have to create it like Pushpa told, right? You have to create it every year as part of yearly activities in general. But this activity again can come down to absence guys as well. The person managing absence, usually it would be already there as well. But if required, this is how it is, kind of set up in general.
Okay. So for example, like the company I'm like supporting, like they have a sales commission employees and they have like 40 different calendars based on their location. So in that case, do they like have to go manually set up every year or like if we have that list, can we directly upload on this? Is there an
So there is
option like, mhm.
so you are saying an automated way of doing it, right?
Automated or like, if we have the spreadsheet, can we upload,
Yes.
can we, okay.
So you are looking for something similar to BDC,
Yes.
BDC upload, right? So there is a
Uh-huh.
concept of EIB here in Workday, which we
Mhm.
can talk about in the later part of things. But that EIB in general is not falling under time tracking. But in the last sessions, if we are able to complete it within time, right, we can talk about that EIB logic as well, how that spreadsheet can be used to upload data or calendars or anything.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so
Got
that capability is there, number one. But
it. Mhm.
in general, that doesn't fall under time tracking overall scope. That would be more on the
Oh,
HCM or basics actually.
okay,
But
got
we'll
it.
talk about it in the later classes. Don't worry.
Okay, okay, thanks.
Yes. So there is a automated way, like as Raj mentioned, right, that we can upload this spreadsheet using an EIB. Then this can be also created using an automated process also. Okay. So where we were in the calendar, right? So the calendar is you can so once you create the holiday calendar, you can add the calendar event. You can by adding the calendar event, right? You have created a calendar event called Republic Day for 26th of January and for this particular year for 2009. And then again, you wanted to add one more calendar event called the Independence Day. Then you can just come over here and add the calendar event. So you can, create one by one calendar event based on the holiday that are being defined for that particular year. Okay. Um, let's say like why we are just creating, defining based on the date. So we know that Republic Day, Independence Day, or this Gandhi Jayanti, these are all the public holidays that which are defined based on the date. But let's say we have Diwali, we have Ugadi, okay, which differ every year. The holiday will be defined this year, it might be on the 1st of April, but for next year, it could be in any other month, right? In month of May, or it can fall on any different month. So that is the reason that we are defining the holidays every year with with a different date and then particular year, okay? So for that year, you will be able to view the calendar event has been set up for that holiday calendar. Is it clear, Sirisa?
Yes.
So again, there is a option called copy, okay, where this will take you to the copy the holiday calendar. So again, you wanted to create a holiday calendar for a different country, then you can just come over here, you can go to the copy. So the you can use the same calendar rule, and then you can similar the description for that for the existing, and then you can copy to a different country name. You can just change the name of the country, and then again you can use a different calendar rule, and then the country or the region you can again mention that. But this is the way that you can copy a holiday calendar for a particular holidays. And have the filter calendar event by date. Okay, let's say you wanted to view the calendar event by date you wanted to view, right? So for example, we have the holiday calendar event starting from the 2009, okay, and we are currently in 2022. Okay, so you wanted to filter the calendar event based on the particular date, then you can just come over here. It will take you to the calendar. You can view the calendar event based on the date. And view calendar workers. Okay, so the view calendar workers is nothing but you will be able to view how many workers those are assigned with this holiday calendar. Okay, so one thing, one concept in the holiday calendar is when the holiday calendar is created, okay, we are not assigning this holiday calendar to any of the worker manually. Okay, then how it will be assigned to the worker? Based on this rule, this calendar rule. So when you define the calendar rule, let's say worker located in India, then all the workers who are who belong to India, they will be eligible for this holidays calendar. Okay, so we are not assigning to any worker one by one. Let's say in India, we have thousands of workers, right? We are not assigning any holiday calendar manually to any worker. So this is the calendar rule. Based on this rule, this holiday calendar will be assigned to the worker. Okay. So this option is nothing but you wanted to view the calendar for worker, then you can just again go ahead and then view like how many workers are assigned to this particular holiday calendar. Is this clear, Sirisa?
Yes.
Yeah, and these options which Pushpa shared, right? Obviously, there are multiple options available, but in general, Sarisha, for you, you'll have to just create it one time, or in general, someone from absence team is creating or maintaining it. There would be always multiple options available in the three dots which Pushpa mentioned, right, in related actions, but you don't have to worry about everything, right? It talks about multiple things. In general, majority of the people do not use all that. For example, editing and holiday calendar and all those things, right? It is a one-time activity and that's it, right? Rest of the steps are there, but not useful, right? So there are other ways of, for example, you can view, create and edit, right? View holiday calendar is there, create holiday calendar there is there, edit is also there, right? If you want to edit anything, why will you go to view and then select an edit option, right? You can directly go to edit holiday calendar. From here as well you can go to edit, but why do you want to do that? So there would be obviously multiple ways of doing things. Like for example, Pushpa this time gave you very detailed option, but with everything in Workday, right, there would be certain things which probably you will have to click and see and learn, right? So it is more descriptive, which we are trying to do in the first ones, which Pushpa is helping you with, everything. But obviously within the Workday, within every configuration, there would be 1,000 other things as well, right, which might be useful, might not be useful. So, and over a period of time, those are added as well. So you don't have to worry too much about, a lot of things. I think the focus again is what we are trying to do is on the basics, which Pushpa is helping right now. One last thing before, I'll, pass it on to Pushpa again is everything in Workday is defined using a logic or an eligibility. You are not defining anything for an employee from a configuration standpoint. In general, in SAP as well, when you were defining based on certain logic. Probably ABAP guys might use certain, codes to write ABAP lines, but in general, the configuration is defined more towards a population or an eligibility. So here as well, if you see, calendar rule is there, which is telling you that everyone which is under India is falling under this calendar. Similarly, in time tracking, when we see worker eligibility rules and rest of the things, you will find that this kind of approach would be used, right? When we talk more about it. Okay.
Noted.
Yeah. Yeah, Pushpa, go ahead.
So the next thing would be our calendar rule. So here you can see, you can define again the calendar rule based on the condition. Let's say here I am going to, as soon as I click over here, again, you can see the 3 dot, right? So here, if you can click over here, you can, it will take you to the another screen, and it will talk about like what is this condition rule all about. Okay, so we have just defined the calendar rule, the location, address, country belong to India, right? We are just defining the holiday calendar rule that within this location, address, country means for this country, we are is equal to India. So I'm not if Raj, shall we go ahead with the condition type or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sure. Because it is again,
Just a second. Let me change.
Yeah, you were saying something, Pushpa?
Yes, yes. I was just depending in the conditions rule, right, where we have
Hello?
like, yeah, Raj, can you hear me?
Can you hear me, Pushpa?
Yes, yes, I can hear you pretty clearly, Raj. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking you were reaching out to my internet, just dropped in between. Any questions for me?
Okay. No, no worries, Raj. I was just saying that shall we go ahead with the what are type of conditions or condition rule, what it contains, or we will take it in the later point of time.
Yeah, I
Like
think
when
we can take it in later point of time. We will let's move to work schedule now.
yeah. So here for you, Sirisa, right now you can just you see that here this is a calendar rule that we have created for the worker location based on the worker address, location, country, and if it is India, then all the worker belong to India will be eligible for this holiday calendar. Okay. So similarly, we can define the calendar rule. So why I was, taking a pause here is like when you create it, definitely you will be able to, you need to understand in more detail, like what are the options here, what is the condition looks like. We will take you more deep dive into that when we go ahead and create the holiday calendar and the calendar rule. Okay. Now, let's say I will take you to the one of the calendar event. So if I can open one calendar event, so these are the very basic information that we need to define the calendar event. Okay. So the view calendar event, you are defining the name of the calendar event. Here it is a Republic Day. So this is the name that you have defined. And for which date? Okay, if it is, as you can see here, this is we are defining for 26th of January and for year 2009. Okay, so for similarly every year we need to define the holiday calendar event for Republic Day for that particular year. Okay, so in the calendar event you have to define the name of the calendar event along with the start date and the end date. Okay, so there might be certain holidays, right, which will be applicable for 2 days or 3 days in a continuously. Let's say there are particular shutdown week for any of the country, right, where normally it happens for a particular month, let's say in July or in December, that for 2 days or for 3 days, the holidays will be applicable. So that time you define the start date and end date. for how many number of days that holiday is applicable for. Okay, so this is the start date and end date. Since the Republic Day is only defined for a particular day, for 26th, we are defining the start date and end date. Okay, and again the start time and the end time. Okay, so we are defining the event, we are defining the time. The start time of this event will be the 9 a.m. or 6 p.m. Depend for that particular country how you wanted to define. You have to also define with the start time and end time for that calendar event. Okay. And whether it is an all day event. Okay. Yes or no. There will be like, if it is all day event, then we don't need to define any particular time. Then you can define whether it is a all day event or if it is a half day event. Let's say certain holidays that you are defining for a Christmas Eve. Okay, Christmas Eve, definitely you are defining for a half a day, right? For that, before the Christmas, you are defining a Christmas Eve. So for those, you can again define the start time and end time, and whether it is an all day event or not, you can also define that. Okay, and the next option will be a recurrence. Okay, how this event is going to recur in the holiday calendar, whether it is a one-time event or it is a recurrence in a particular interval. Okay, so based on the type of the event, you can define these categories in the holiday calendar. Do you have any questions, Sirisa, here on the calendar event?
No, I'm good, Pushpa.
Okay. Here we are define the calendar event. Okay, there is again one more option is display on time off and leave calendar. Okay, so the time off and leave calendar, it is basically part of the absence module, where we are, employee will be able to view the particular time off, right? Whether you wanted to display in the time off and the leave in the calendar, you want to display this event. Let's say when the employee is going to request the time off on that on 26th, you wanted to display that, okay, hey, 26th of January, this is a Republic Day, it is a holiday. Okay, do you want to display that? So this is the option where you, if you can define, you wanted to display this on the time off and leave calendar. Okay, so this holiday calendar, basically we are defining for absence management, we define for time tracking. In time tracking, why do we need to define the holiday calendar? Definitely, let's say when the employee is scheduled for a particular day, right? Whether that day is a holiday or whether that day, is there any holiday or half a day holiday or full day holiday? Is there any holiday for on that particular day? And then how the, how the overtime for a holiday is calculated for. That is the reason that we are defining the holiday calendar in time tracking. Is that clear, Sirisa?
The display on time off. So if we update as no, so that is not visible. The calendar is not visible at the
Exactly. The calendar, yes, this holiday calendar will not be visible while requesting the time off in the absence calendar.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have any questions over here, Sirisa? Any more questions on holiday calendar?
Regarding the eligibility rules for this calendars, so I think you were showing some other screen, right? Where this location, can you go back to that screen again?
Yeah, it's just the screen.
Okay, so here we can add more options, right? For this location, for this employee type.
Yes,
so
yes,
I think,
yes.
okay.
Correct.
Yeah, Raj.
Yeah, I was saying, once we look at time entry calculations, right? Everywhere we use these kind of logics, it would be exactly the same. You can add 5 more conditions here if required.
Okay. How about rule usage on the other tab? Oh, okay.
It is just telling you about where exactly it is being
Where
used. And
yes.
Okay.
and
Got it.
and as someone who's learning, Sirisha,
Mhm.
don't worry too much about additional factors as well, because for example, you configure something, there would be certain things where it might be used. So the approach, and again, I'll tell you the reason, because in general, the SAP consultants, if they try to move to Workday, right, their approach is always looking at multiple aspects of screen. But the approach should be, at least in configuring Workday, is you should look at, okay, you are defining something on that screen. There could be
Mhm.
potential 10 different things which are there interconnected. The good part with Workday is you are able to see it right away. The bad part
Mhm.
with SAP was you have to go through and then see, right? It required you to go through SPRO. So even though there is a lot of information available for you, for example, the same rule might be used somewhere else as well, right? For example,
Mhm.
then this is an additional information in general, but the approach towards configuration should be, what is the objective of that configuration? And if you're defining something new, you should not worry too much about additional factors as well. Once you get used to the screen, you will probably not even think about rule usage in these conditions, right? So
Mhm.
that would be an advice and approach which, in general, I'll suggest once we
Yeah. Yeah.
talk more about multiple aspects today. So I think holiday calendar, Pushpa, is covered completely. uh Pushpa, do you want to move to the next one on the work schedule? I think
Yes.
you were talking about period schedule as well as work schedule, right? These two things.
Yes. Yes. Correct. So again, you can just search the view work schedule as soon as you just type in, and then you will be able to see the view work schedule calendar. And here you can search your work schedule calendar. So let's say I will show you one of the standard work schedule calendar. For that, as you can see here, there will be a lot of options, right? You wanted to search, you wanted to just type in, then the existing work schedule calendar will pop up, or you wanted to create also, there will be options to create the work schedule calendar. Okay. And you wanted to view the holiday, the work schedule calendar by any group, or based on the category also, you will be able to view. You can utilize all these options to view a work schedule calendar. So let's view how this work schedule calendar looks like in this tenant. Okay.
Mhm.
So as you can see here, again, the name of the work schedule calendar, the standard 40 hour per week. This is the name that has been defined. And again, you can see this three dot, right, where it will take you to the different category, different options. Okay. So the first option here, it would be edit and again delete. So you can edit the work schedule calendar, you can delete the work schedule calendar, and all different options it will take you, depend on what you wanted to perform all the related actions. Okay.
Okay. So
Let's
one quick
understand.
question. So holiday calendar and work schedule is it always like one-to-one mapping, or can I assign one work schedule to like 40 different holiday calendars?
To we employ, there could be like one holiday calendar. Okay, always we are defining the holiday calendar based on the particular rule, right? Let's say for a country, or for a defining based on the full time or interns, or based on the employee type. So it
Mhm.
would be always one holiday calendar. Again, the work schedule calendar, it can be many. Okay, depend, like if there can be shift workers that are already they are assigned to multiple work schedule calendar. If they are they are scheduled to a different schedule for a particular month. Okay, for 1 week they are defined for a one kind of work schedule, for another week. So it can be one to one, and it can be one to many. It is not necessarily always one to one.
Yeah.
Okay. So
And one thing, Sirisha, your specific question, right? So what Pushpa is telling about, it is about work schedule. There could be multiple work schedule for the same person. For the first 3 weeks of the month, person can be working in the day shift. Then last one can be night shift. But there is no linkage between holiday calendar and work schedule directly. It is linking through the employee, through the worker. They don't talk to each other that ways. Holiday calendar you define separately, work schedule calendar you define separately. These are two different things.
Okay.
They can be independent to each other. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, if at all, like I was telling about 40 different calendars, right? Because if they're like 40 different location, the holiday calendars are assigned individually at the location, but they'll all be working the standard 40 hours work week. So in that case, there'll be only one work schedule, but 40 different calendar assigned for each location.
Correct. In your case, in your company, if that's the case, see, there is no limit to it. Like Pushpa was telling, right? You can be in Germany. You can create, depending on the city as well. You can create a holiday calendar. But do you want to? If your company is having 40 countries or 40 different requirements of holiday calendars, then there could be 40. Okay, but do you need it? Possibly no, possibly yes. Similar to work schedule, can you have just a single work schedule used across the whole company? Yes. Across all the countries? Yes, you can have it. Do you want to have it? For example, an IT company where there is, let's say there is an IT company where there is no logic of shift. Everyone is working from home. That company is totally remote. There is no tracking of hours. Then you can define a normal work schedule. You don't have to worry. Obviously, in general, in the offer letter for employees, you mentioned 9 to 5 is your overall expected time, right? And that's it. You don't have to create multiple ones. But if there is a requirement, then you can create. So it totally depends on the requirement in your specific question, Sirisha. It was clear, right, Sirisha? I didn't receive any response from you.
Yeah, I got it, Raj. So, I mean, in general, like, I got it, like how it works.
Yeah, in general, people prefer not to create. See, these are anyways very foundational things. What Pushpa is mentioning is more towards one-time activity in general, which we do at the start. Once you create it, you don't worry too much about it. These are very foundation ones. What I will suggest is, you go back to your, if you have access in your tenant, you go back and see. If not, anyways, upcoming sessions, we are providing you with the tenant also. That is also there. But in general, if I tell you, these are foundation things which you have to just think from, at the starting, that based on the requirement, what is required.
Okay.
Yep. Pushpa, you can go ahead. Thanks.
Yeah. So here you are defining the name of the work schedule calendar. Again, the description will be more detail about like for why this holiday calendar, sorry, why this work schedule calendar belong to, what it is, all the detail you can define. Also, you can define for a particular country that you are creating this work schedule calendar. You can also do that. Okay. And again, you can see there is a calendar rule, right? Like, as I said earlier, that we are not assigning this holiday calendar or work schedule calendar directly to any employee, right? To any worker. This is defined based on the calendar rule. Okay. So here the calendar rule has been defined for full-time salaried global worker with exclusions. Let's say you can define for a country, you can define based on the global worker or the industrial worker or full-time or part-time. Definitely based on your, like how you wanted to define this work schedule calendar, based on that you can build a calendar rule. Okay. And again, the work schedule calendar group, this also you can define, like here they have defined for full-time, right? When you are defining full-time, so all the full-time worker will be eligible for this holiday, for this work schedule calendar. So this is how the calendar rule and the calendar group will be defined for a work schedule calendar. Okay. Do you have any questions, Sirisa, here on the calendar rule or the work schedule calendar group?
No, I'm good, Pushpa.
Okay. So the next is we have the, the for the time specific configurations. 1 minute, just give me a minute. Okay. So for the time tracking, for very specific time tracking specific the configurations that we will enable here in this section. So first is we have the day breaker. Okay. And so the day breaker, what does it define? Like the day breaker is nothing but we wanted to mention like what is the time that the particular day, the work schedule calendar will be applicable for. Okay, we can define based on the work week and based on the day, like on which time, what is the time that will be this work schedule will be visible to the employer, to the worker. Okay, work week start day Monday. So when we define here Monday, right, in time tracking, your when the employees are entering the time sheet, you must have seen that even in SAP, right, the CATS tool, that they will be it will always start with a particular day, right, whether it is Sunday or Monday. So based on this setup, your calendar will be visible in the time tracking. Are you getting it, Sirisa?
Yes.
You are defining that particular day and the day breaker, the time that will be starting in the time sheet. Okay. And also we have the the pattern of this work schedule calendar, like how the when the pattern start date, and then like how it has been scheduled for, or how the work schedule calendar is scheduled from throughout the week. Okay, so here as you can see, this is the pattern that has been defined. Sunday is off and Saturday is off, and from Monday throughout Friday they have defined 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Okay, so Monday to Friday is your working, the employee is scheduled to work for 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., where we have the weekly off as Saturday and Sunday. Okay. And also we have the weekly hour. Okay. So when you have the options to define like how the work schedule calendar you wanted to define in the system. Let's say you have employees who are working 3 days in a week. Okay, you wanted to define this Saturday, Monday, and Tuesday. You wanted to define as a working day, and rest of the day you wanted to uh, give them as a weekly off. Okay, that also you can define here, that from Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, you can define 8 hours, or you can define 12 hours, like how you wanted to set up the work schedule calendar. And also we have the weekly hour. What is the total weekly hour you wanted to define based on this holiday calendar, based on this work schedule calendar. Okay. And here you can see the pattern detail, right? If you once you click over here, you will be able to see again detail, the day of the week and the start time. And also there is a options to define the meal break, like meal start and the meal end. Like you wanted to define, let's say you wanted to provide 12 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. or the 30 minutes of the meal break with the meal start and the meal end. Also, there is the options to provide, to set up those meal start date and meal end break. Okay, during the throughout the day, during the in between the start date and end date for a particular day, like how you wanted to schedule this, you wanted to define the work schedule for that particular group of employees. And here
Meal
we
pay, like in case if you set up the meal pay, but still the employee can go and edit based on the schedule he takes, right? Or is it not editable?
no, So
Okay.
how it will be, so these are everything here what you see, right? It is defined in this system. For a worker, there won't be any options to edit this start time or end time. Okay.
Okay, but we say in the back, like in the back end, like whether it's a paid meal or a unpaid meal, right?
That is a different setup again. Okay.
Okay.
So those setups are very specific to the time tracking setup, like how we wanted to set up in while in define in the time tracking also you can create a meal break. You can define a time type, time entry code, time code group also you can set up, but those are very specific to the time tracking configurations. There also you can do that. But here it is just based on the work schedule calendar where you are defining. In general, we are not defining any meal started or meal end here, but Workday has given this flexibility to configure in the work schedule calendar also. Let's say you are in time tracking, right? You have built one rule stating that employee working beyond 8 hours, they will get some overtime. Okay. So how the system will understand that this employee is, has worked beyond than 8 hours, how the system will understand. So the system will look into what the employee is scheduled to work. What is the work schedule that has been defined for this employee? And then here, the answer is here. So based on this time, based on 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and the total hours, right? 8-hour working. Here the system will see the what is the scheduled hour for this employee. And then if the employee is working beyond that 8 hours, means in time tracking, if the employee has entered, let's say in and out time as 9 to 6 p.m. or 9 to 8 p.m., then the additional time will be considered as overtime. Okay. So here this work schedule calendar is very important in time tracking to understand how the employee has been scheduled to work, how the system has been defined. Okay.
Mhm.
Like here there could be many more scenario. You can Friday, let's say for certain country, right? Friday would be a half a day. Okay. Here you can define again the start date and end date to that 4 hours or 5 hours if you wanted to provide that, and also the number of hours you can define based on that also. Okay.
Okay, so for example, if California employees, they cannot take the schedule break,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the company has to pay the penalty. So in this
Yes.
case, we schedule the meal pay start and end date. And how do the employee record the, I mean, it's a schedule in the back end, like for example, 12 to 1 is their meal break.
Mm-hmm.
So how do the employee record whether they took or not? Like, how does it work here?
Okay. So again, you wanted to restrict the employee to take the meal break, right? So we can
Uh-huh.
configure that in time tracking. There is a specific that we can make it mandatory that to take the employees during a particular time. Okay. We can configure again those validation, those rule in the system that employee need to take those many, 30 minutes or 1 hours of meal break. We can also define that.
Okay, so do you think they'll be using a different time code for
Yes.
recording their meal break? Okay.
Yes, yes. So we have, when you enter to the time tracking configurations, right, in the time entry template, we'll have all kind of all these queries will be, uh, get resolved during that time. You'll be able to know there are a lot of configurations that Workday has given, the very specific to the meal break, how you can configure, how you wanted to display the total, like how you wanted to display the working hours, the overtime hours, or any kind of shift you have configured in the system, how you wanted to display that in time tracking. So those can be done. So those are all basically in Workday, you can everything you can define these kind of configurations, rule based, condition based, and validations. These are all applicable in time tracking.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions you have, Sirisa, so far?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Again, we can, like, once you go ahead and create these work schedule calendar or the holiday calendar, right, you will be able to view, you will have a lot of other questions also. You will be able to see there are a lot of options, but you can very minimum, you can define the calendar rule or the calendar group, and then you can define the pattern for this holiday or the work schedule calendar and the start time, end time. You will be able to, once you get a hands-on, it will be very easy to understand like how it has been set up in the tenant. Okay.
Okay.
Next thing would be our period schedule. Okay, so view period schedule. Again, we have, let's say I will take you to the one of the monthly period schedule. So whenever you search, again, here you can see monthly, semi-monthly, or say monthly time lag. So based on it, there could be different type of period schedule, right? You can define in the system. So let's see like how the monthly period schedule, how it has been set up in this tenant. Okay. Again, when I search period schedule, it will take you to the view period schedule. And this is the name of the period schedule. And again, here you can see there are 3 dots right here. Once you click on that 3 dot, means there is something that there are again the related actions that you can perform everything. Okay. So once you create, that time I will take you to more about it, like what are the options are there in the period schedule. But first, let us understand what are, like how the period schedule has been defined in the system. Like what are the main component of a period schedule? So here you are defining the name of the period schedule. So the name is monthly. We have defined. We have also defined the frequency. So for monthly period schedule, you are defining the frequencies monthly. And usage is, so this period schedule is something, it can be used in absence, payroll, and time tracking. Okay. All these different module that period schedule will be used for. Basically, it is core for a payroll, but even for time tracking and for absence also, we are using the period schedule. Okay. And irregular pay date. Payday means how you wanted to define the payday for that particular period schedule, the last day of the month, or last working day of the month, or last day of the month. You can define also the payday of any period schedule. So when you are defining the period schedule, right, here you have the periods, the period number, like how many period for a particular year. Okay. Here, if you can see, this is a monthly period schedule, and it has been defined, let's say for 2020 year, right? There are total number of period is 12. Okay. Since it is a monthly, we have total 12 period that we have defined in this period schedule. And the period started. So for example, we have this is December, 1st December 2020. Okay. And the period number is 12. So for 1st December 2020 would be our period started, and period ended will be the last day of that month. So always we are defining the first day to last day of the month. But depending on your requirement, right, based on your requirement, you can define the period started and period ended and the number of period. Okay. And payroll payment date. So here again, we have defined the last day of the month, right? So this also you can define on what would be your payroll payment date. Based on that, you can define in the period schedule. You want to define the last day, or you want to define a midday, or any day you wanted to define for a particular period schedule. Also, you can do that. Okay.
So is this period schedule handled by the payroll IT team, or mostly the time tracking team?
Yeah, mostly payroll actually.
Okay.
Yeah, mostly if you see, it is very close to, I think that is really close to their config, they always take care of this one. But what Pushpa was trying to tell, obviously it is being used in absence and time tracking as well, right? Because in a way, everything is defined based on that logic, your monthly payout. If, in, let's say, in a lot of countries, there is a monthly payroll period schedule, right, being used. People get paid on a monthly basis. So in that case, payroll takes care of this one. Absence and time tracking kind of receive this information to use for them. So if you remember our slide, right, one of the things which I was telling you, HCM talks to time tracking, payroll talks to time tracking. So this is payroll talking to time tracking in a way. Whatever in general payroll guys define, you will follow that. Mostly that is the case, and they take care of in terms of maintenance and everything in general.
Okay, even if the company doesn't use time tracking in their system, do those things still appear? Absence time tracking still appear?
No. So you have to. No. That's a good question. You won't define that. If you are not using absence, Pushpa, do you mean clicking on time tracking once or absence as well?
Yeah.
So if you see, it is being used somewhere in time tracking. If you don't use absence, if you don't use time tracking, then it is just for payroll. For payroll, it is a bare minimum requirement to have. For payroll, it is foundation step number 1. That's where they need to use it. For absence and for time tracking, obviously they need it if you are completing and configuration. But in terms of ownership of this activity, in general, payroll is the main owner. You are there to assist and look at the impact for your module. Otherwise, you don't have to worry, because payroll takes care of this development or maintenance in future as well.
Okay, so time tracking. So let's assume like we have like 10 different attendance codes and 10 different absence codes. So like we need to specify all those available attendance and absence codes on the screen here, like under absence, like it has more options, right? What does it mean?
Which one?
Here,
Oh,
Yeah.
these
okay.
are right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are anyways. So let me tell you in simple words, because this is you define on the absence configuration to use this thing. So if you are using absence, then for certain absence plans, you need to use this one. So whatever you use, the usage is reflecting here. In time tracking, if you see, we are using it in certain eligibility condition. So whatever is being created there, that is linked here. That's it.
Okay. It's not
So
manually set up, like it's automatically
no,
put by the system. Okay.
it is automatically added by the system on AUS annual leave. You use this one, that's why it is coming up here. So it is interconnected. Okay. You are not defining it here that for absence plan, you are using it here. Indirectly, it is coming up, and this one as well.
Okay. The same
The
with
time
work.
tracking.
If have like 10 different work eligibility rules, everything will be pulled up on the screen.
Correct.
Okay.
So that is the logic.
Usually work eligibility rules, it is by week. And if your payroll schedule is bi-weekly, does that still pull up on the screen?
You want to see how exact Pushpa, do you mind sharing the bi-weekly one as well? So you create different ones on different needs. There is a monthly one, there is a bi-weekly one. There are ways of creating multiple. If you see, there would be bi-weekly as well, which is being created. So this works on a bi-weekly pattern. So the overall number of transactions, or overall thing would be more than that, more than 12 in a year, depending on number of weeks, right? It will be almost double, or in fact, in some cases 25, 26 as well, depending on the dates. So you create separate ones based on that. But again, this comes to payroll to create. If you are using it somewhere in time tracking, you will use it. Otherwise, you won't.
Okay. So suppose, I mean, like we have multiple working weeks, like, employees work Sunday to Saturday and they're on bi-weekly schedule, but few employees, they are paid on 1 week lag. Few employees, I mean, their working week is the same, but they're paid on lag. So in that scenario, do we set up different period schedule, or still it's the same?
You use the same. See, at the end, you look at how exactly the payment is being processed. If the payment is processed on a bi-weekly basis, you will have to follow bi-weekly in general.
Okay.
So the the driving force, employee might be entering time on a daily basis, weekly basis, whatever, right? At the end, what needs to be followed is why we are creating time tracking is for the payout on, or the final impact is payroll. So that's where we have to think, at the end, what do you want? You want the payroll to be processed, and your period schedule should kind of link to those time tracking areas, right? So that is the key thing. At the end, define. So this is again foundational thing. When you will be configuring it for the first time, where any client or company is not having this thing, right? You'll be sitting with payroll guys, you'll be sitting with absence guys, you'll be sitting with the integration guys and defining. Payroll will say, okay, for India employees, we run monthly. So your time tracking should work on a monthly basis. For, let's say for US, you have bi-weekly, obviously. So for everything should run on a bi-weekly basis to manage the payroll as well, right? To manage retro transactions. So everything in a way is defined from the payroll side of things. Technically, if you see, because at the end you want the dollars to be matched, right? So that's where time tracking follows the payroll schedule indirectly, if you see.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the only thing I'm not clear is, like, for example, like always the employee working week is Sunday to Saturday, regardless if he's like paid monthly, bi-weekly.
Correct.
But in this case, if he's a paid bi-weekly schedule, we need to have a time, a time schedule also should be set up bi-weekly.
No, everything runs on a, see, your employee screen will be a weekly screen. Whatever are the dates, right? Those dates would be picked up by the system indirectly. You don't have to worry. For example, when we show that screen to you, right, how time entry happens, even though it is time entry based on, certain weeks. For example, monthly employees, there are 4 weeks. The last day is the midweek, right? System will take care of those half dates only to process the payroll. For example, 31st falls on Wednesday, right? System will consider time till 31st to look at everything, even though everything is set up on a weekly basis in the Workday side of things. And by setup, I am telling the screen behind the period schedule would be a monthly period schedule. Obviously, the period schedule would be a monthly period schedule, but the screen where employee enters time, right, that shows a weekly and weekly kind of screen, and we'll show that, how exactly it looks. So even though on the screen it is showing you weekly screen, it, in general, everyone works from Monday to Friday. Friday they enter time, right? Let's say they are India employees, right? Every Friday they enter the time for the whole week. But let's say the end of the month happens on the Wednesday, right? Then system will take care and look up to that date only to process the payroll by the logic of period schedule, even though the screen looks different, right? So a US employee will have a screen which shows a weekly, an Indian employee will have a screen which shows weekly, but in the background, everything is working according to the payroll, which is bi-weekly or a monthly cycle. Okay. So system takes care of that because of those dates which we have, right? You don't have to worry that the only emphasis or, the only aspect to process the payroll is the time should be entered for that date, and rest of the things will be taken care of by these logics which we are creating in the background.
Okay.
And yeah, and let's do that. Pushpa, do you mind sharing enter time for any worker, for a sample worker, right?
Yeah, we can.
Because that would be helpful for visualizing. There is a lot of topics. One of the things, Sirisha, is there, time tracking is a complex module. Try not to learn or try not to think from SAP perspective always. That is one of the things which I told you in the first class as well, in the intro one, because the problem is you'll be confused. I learned time tracking 10 years back, and when I was an expert on SAP side of things, if I was comparing it with that, right, it will be a problem. Trust me. SAP as a module and Workday as a module, as an application, are totally poles apart. Workday, American based approach where Oracle thinking comes into the picture, and SAP is very robust in terms of how do we define, very different from the linkage. Not every ERP would have a same logic, right? So even though the business function would remain, don't try to link it. Otherwise, it will be difficult for you to think
Okay.
from that perspective, right? And we'll talk more about it, because right now, see, I'll tell you one thing. By the next two classes, you'll be confused as well, more confused, because it is a complex module. As soon as you learn, it will be more confusing, but as soon as you apply as well from a basic standpoint, slowly you will start learning, because out of all the Workday modules, time tracking can be a difficult one to understand. If you were a fresh graduate or having no experience as well, or having just the business knowledge, it would have been easier. But since you have SAP knowledge as well, unlearn part is also required, right? If you were having pure HR experience and you were doing system for the first time, you don't know SAP, then it is easier. But now you know SAP as well, and your system, your mind thinks from SAP thinking as well, because all the years you have thought things from an SAP perspective, right? So don't do that as well in a way. And these are good questions, but one of the recommendations from my side is not to compare with SAP as well in general. Wherever it is easier or logical, I'll try to, but on the configuration side, no, not at all, because it is very different. So what we are trying to do here is enter time for worker, right? Basically, we are trying to enter time as an admin for a sample employee, right? And we'll show you the screen how exactly it looks like. And in general, everywhere in this world, people use this UI only for Workday. So it shows Monday to Sunday time, for a date range. This employee, Kevin Turner, might have, a weekly, bi-weekly, whatever be the period schedule, we don't have to worry. The thing is, the screen available is a weekly screen. And as an employee, the employee can enter time. He or she is not worried about his paycheck. As an end user, you are just entering time for the week. That's it. For that worker, he's not worried about when exactly it is being processed and everything. So this is an end user screen. If a normal user logs in and enters time, this is the screen which comes up, right? Which shows different dates, and there is a time as well. If you see here, 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m., and everything is there. Though overall 24 hours are there, and there is an option, click to enter time as well, right? So here exactly the time entry happens. Even though it is a weekly one, the payroll might be processed on a monthly basis. Okay, that is clear, right? Every time by default it's a weekly based approach in Workday, but in reality on the background it might run on a bi-weekly basis or a monthly basis. Okay.
Yeah. So the enter time screen here, you have the options to view by week, or also there is an option to view by day. Okay, you can display for a particular day also how many hours that has been entered by this employee. But by default, this is a weekly view. You can view in the tenant. Okay. So here you have the weeks. Let's say like for a particular week you wanted to view, or you have this option to go back to the previous week, or particularly you wanted to select any of this week, right? You can also have these options to view that. When you view, it will take you to the calendar, and then you can go again to that respective week. Okay. This is, and also you wanted to, there is an option of today. Let's say we are in this week, right? 7th of March to the 13th of March. As soon as you click today, it will take you to this current week. Okay. But as you can see here, 26th, it has been highlighted here. So it will take you to that particular week. Also, you can see here, it is defined Monday to Sunday, and then also the hours is 0. So as soon as the employee has entered in particular number of hours, so that you will be able to see here for particular day, let's say Monday or Saturday, how many hours that has been entered by employee. Okay. So in this screen here, you also have view the summary, to view the summary of, let's say these are the time that has been defined in the system for this employee. So the summary would be like for the total week, how many hours the employee has entered for regular hours, and then overtime or the double time based on this different premium working hours. You will be able to have a summary view for that particular week. Okay. And there is
One
a
of the,
yeah.
one more
Yaras?
thing, Pushpa, yeah, one thing to relate to her. If you remember the holiday calendar, right? If you display it, it will show up as a holiday as well. We can show some example later, but that also trickles down here.
Yes. And when you click here, that is, as you can see here, right, there is a accents, right? Like here, there will be a different related accent that will be available for this employee. Again, these are also basically based on the configure, like how you have configured in the tenant. This would be applicable here. So this one you can review in the later point of time when we will define, when we will take you to those topics. And what? And as you can see here, we have I have just logged in as an admin, right? So I won't have any much options to enter the time for this employee. But when I log in as an employee, I will be able to view like how how to enter the time and how I can submit. So here you can see you won't be able to see any submit button or anything. You just see that, okay, there is something called unmet check-in, and then there are 6 alert you are able to. And when you click on these alerts, right? So these are something that is coming as based on our system validation, that how we have set up. Based on that, this alert will appear in the screen. Okay. So for this employee had checked in, if you can see here, this employee had checked in at 6:11 a.m. Okay. So in work schedule calendar, I was telling you, right, I was explaining you that we have defined the worker to working time will start at 9 a.m. Okay. So when the system see here that, okay, employee has entered some time, which is beyond that our scheduled working hours. Okay. That time here, as you can see here, need attention. Okay. And then based on this also you are able to see these alerts. Okay. So these alerts and these validations, right? Again, it is more about the time tracking specific configurations that we will discuss, like when we start start doing the configuration for time tracking. Those we will discuss, like how we can put a proper validation rule, the time entry validations, that how it will work. But this is the basic understanding that how does it looks like, okay, in the system.
Yeah, Sirisha, take 10, just take 20 seconds to look at the screen and ask any questions what you have from your perspective, right? Just think of the screen as an end user, as someone who's entering time, not as a workday person, as someone who's entering time, right? This screen would come up for someone who's working as a shift person, right? So these all things would be available for him or her, right, to enter. Don't think from a admin or someone who's configuring, right? Just think from that perspective.
Right.
Yeah, just look at the screen and think of all the options. See, if you just on the dates, right? If you see Monday 3:21, right? Hours are there. It will show how many hours you enter, right? On 3:26 as well. If you see unmatched check-in, so all the things would be available on, and on the right hand side, if you entered, for example, on a weekly basis, how many hours you have put in as regular and overtime, all those things would also come up. Okay.
Thank you for attending the session. I hope you all enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Also, feel free to ask your questions in the comment section below, and we will reply to them at the earliest.